guys, this is the last semi-finals match, and the finals is tomorrow. Yes, and the tournament's finally over. This has taken way too long. Let's start. El Salvador's the first game up. I expect at least 2 180s this game. El Salvador, I want 5 from you. 21. Liechtenstein, 121. 21, 121. Better. El Salvador, 160. Liechtenstein, 158. Why am I being so stupid this time? El Salvador, 12. Liechtenstein, 86. El Salvador, 81. Liechtenstein, 136. Oof. El Salvador, 59. Liechtenstein needs 16. They get 8. El Salvador, 155. Liechtenstein need 8. They get 8. El Salvador might finally get out and they'll no longer have to suffer saying their name because sometimes they really struggle. Liechtenstein, 83. El Salvador, 59. Liechtenstein, 57. If El Salvador makes it through, for the fun, I'm just going to practice saying El Salvador. Liechtenstein, 46. El Salvador, 80. Liechtenstein, 118. El Salvador, 87. Liechtenstein, 65. El Salvador, 152. They got 152. El Salvador, 66. Liechtenstein, 179. El Salvador, 56. Liechtenstein, 91. El Salvador, 80. Liechtenstein, 44. El Salvador, 122. Liechtenstein, 52. El Salvador, 157. Liechtenstein need 135. They get 135. Don't say this is going to be one of the matches where they just take it in turns to win legs. Liechtenstein, 90. El Salvador, 34. Liechtenstein, 174. El Salvador, 109. Liechtenstein, 33. El Salvador, 112. Liechtenstein, 8. El Salvador, 177. Liechtenstein, 91. El Salvador, 69. Boom. They're taking it in turns, aren't they? El Salvador, 7. Liechtenstein, 74. El Salvador, 72. Liechtenstein, 174. El Salvador, 19. Liechtenstein, 75. El Salvador, 4. Liechtenstein, 31. El Salvador, 71. Liechtenstein, 147. They missed. El Salvador, 83. Liechtenstein need 36. They got 36. Liechtenstein are going to win 6-5. Liechtenstein, 105. El Salvador, 140. Liechtenstein, 98. El Salvador, 86. Liechtenstein, 99. El Salvador, 100. Just 15. Liechtenstein, 102. El Salvador, 141. 97 for Liechtenstein. They got it. Nice. El Salvador, 16. Liechtenstein, 38. El Salvador, 3. Liechtenstein, 110. El Salvador, 50. Liechtenstein, 49. El Salvador, 166. Liechtenstein, 58. El Salvador, 97. Liechtenstein, 119. El Salvador, 139. Liechtenstein, 127. El Salvador, 30. Ka-ching. Alright, very nice. Liechtenstein, 93. El Salvador, 82. Liechtenstein, 160. El Salvador, 117. Liechtenstein, 48. El Salvador, 42. Liechtenstein, 106. El Salvador 117, Liechtenstein 94. They got it. El Salvador 28, Liechtenstein 117. El Salvador 15, Liechtenstein 72. El Salvador 29, Liechtenstein 79. El Salvador 130, Liechtenstein 100. El Salvador 129, Liechtenstein 133. They missed. That's sad. Liechtenstein 16. Boom. Liechtenstein are winning 2-0. Alright, Liechtenstein win 6-0 and I get the game over. 170. El Salvador 110. Liechtenstein 8. El Salvador 20. Liechtenstein 160. El Salvador 24. Liechtenstein 7. El Salvador 33. Liechtenstein 156. They missed. El Salvador 34. Liechtenstein 36. Boom. El Salvador 174. Liechtenstein 12. El Salvador 11. Liechtenstein 39. El Salvador 77. Liechtenstein 104. El Salvador 30. Liechtenstein 126. 157 for El Salvador. Liechtenstein 58. El Salvador 52. They got it. Nice. Liechtenstein 38. El Salvador 100. Liechtenstein got 102. El Salvador got 82. Liechtenstein 122. El Salvador 151. Liechtenstein 49. El Salvador, imagine El Salvador get 9. Maybe not. 32. Liechtenstein 69. 136. They missed. 121 for Liechtenstein. They missed. Oh, don't say they're doing this again. They are, aren't they? El Salvador missed 16. Liechtenstein missed 40. El Salvador missed 8. Oh, okay, they got 8 actually. El Salvador, nothing. Amazing start. Liechtenstein, 44. El Salvador, 68. Liechtenstein, 114. El Salvador, 124. Liechtenstein, 142. El Salvador, 178. Liechtenstein, 155. El Salvador, 131. They got it. It's now 2. They're still losing 2-1 though. Liechtenstein, 2. El Salvador, 25. 23 more. Liechtenstein, 32. El Salvador, 128. Liechtenstein, 43. El Salvador, 149. Liechtenstein, 39. El Salvador, 125. Liechtenstein, 27. El Salvador, 74. They missed. They got 42. Liechtenstein, 164. El Salvador, 32. They got 32. El Salvador, 81. Liechtenstein, 49. El Salvador, 127. Liechtenstein, 10. El Salvador, 141. Liechtenstein, 25. 152 for El Salvador. They missed. Liechtenstein, 179. El Salvador is 32. They got 32. Liechtenstein, 149. El Salvador, 15. Liechtenstein, 24. El Salvador, 92. Liechtenstein, 52. El Salvador, 44. Liechtenstein, 167. El Salvador, 135. 109 for Liechtenstein. They got 109. Nice. El Salvador, 91. Liechtenstein, 156. El Salvador, 113. Liechtenstein, 112. El Salvador 61. Liechtenstein 128. El Salvador 14. Liechtenstein 105. They missed. They're going to have another chance though. El Salvador 60. Liechtenstein 32. El Salvador 76. Liechtenstein 16. They got it. Nice. Wow. Another deciding leg. 132. Nice. 6. 16. 86. 43. 78. Liechtenstein 34. El Salvador 126. 167 for Liechtenstein. El Salvador 112. Liechtenstein 109. They missed. That could have been a mistake. 93. And it was a mistake indeed. The game's now tied. Alright, let's get the server. Come on, hurry up. 90. 130. 34. 66 for Liechtenstein, and El Salvador gets 88. Liechtenstein. That's 29. El Salvador 167. Liechtenstein 17. El Salvador 122. Now they're winning. Liechtenstein 159. El Salvador 153. Liechtenstein 39. El Salvador 94. Liechtenstein 156. 101. Liechtenstein 147. I got it. The game's tied again. El Salvador 19. Liechtenstein 82. El Salvador 149. Liechtenstein 113. El Salvador 35. Liechtenstein 85. El Salvador 45. Liechtenstein 130. 3. Liechtenstein 91. They missed. They're gonna have 18 more chances. Maybe not. Liechtenstein 40. Boom. Liechtenstein 37. El Salvador 116. Liechtenstein 153. El Salvador 5. Liechtenstein 164. El Salvador 4. 147 for Liechtenstein. They missed. El Salvador 77. Liechtenstein 36. They got 36. Now they're winning 3-2. Nice. El Salvador 67. Liechtenstein 175. El Salvador 97. Liechtenstein 17. El Salvador 106. Liechtenstein 161. El Salvador 54. 148 for Liechtenstein. They get 148. Liechtenstein 136. El Salvador 108. Liechtenstein 149. El Salvador 48. Liechtenstein 110. El Salvador 51. Liechtenstein 106. Okay, nice. El Salvador 109. Liechtenstein 128. El Salvador 89. Liechtenstein 24. El Salvador 82. Liechtenstein 151. El Salvador 161. Liechtenstein 165. El Salvador 60. They got it. Liechtenstein 24. El Salvador 56. Liechtenstein 47. El Salvador 85. Liechtenstein 173. El Salvador 132. Liechtenstein 21. El Salvador 130. Liechtenstein 148. 98. They missed. 88. 88, mate. Sorted. Nice. Well done, Liechtenstein. You're winning 4-2. El Salvador 131. Liechtenstein 114. El Salvador 56. Liechtenstein 57. El Salvador 14. Liechtenstein 42. El Salvador 144. Liechtenstein 130. El Salvador 156. Liechtenstein 46. El Salvador 36. I got 18. 66 for Liechtenstein. 18 for El Salvador. They miss. Liechtenstein 146. They got it. Now they're just absolutely demolishing El Salvador. See you in the final, Liechtenstein against Armenia. 121. Wasn't Armenia like one of the first ones to play? No, that was in the second game against Montenegro. El Salvador 149. Liechtenstein 17. El Salvador 55. 363, but they get 48. El Salvador 103. Liechtenstein 130. El Salvador 71. Liechtenstein 74. 123 for El Salvador. I got 123. El Salvador 62. Liechtenstein 53. El Salvador 15. Liechtenstein 31. El Salvador 43. Liechtenstein 162. El Salvador 62. Liechtenstein 72. El Salvador 168. Liechtenstein 53. El Salvador 151. They got 151. Ooh, they could get another set. Liechtenstein 97. El Salvador 116. Liechtenstein 153. El Salvador gets 146. Liechtenstein 120. El Salvador 158. Liechtenstein 131. They got 99. El Salvador 81. Oh, I got this 4-3 now. I could be correct with Liechtenstein winning 6-5 actually. 158 for El Salvador. Liechtenstein 18. El Salvador nothing. Liechtenstein 34. El Salvador 109. Liechtenstein 129. El Salvador 104. Liechtenstein 169. El Salvador 130. They missed. 151 for Liechtenstein. Nope. 50 for El Salvador. Nope. 40 for Liechtenstein. Nope. 32 for El Salvador. Yes. Nice. Oh well. El Salvador could have a comeback here. Liechtenstein 15. El Salvador 12. Liechtenstein 29. El Salvador 129. Liechtenstein 121. El Salvador 90. Liechtenstein 61. El Salvador 157. Liechtenstein 87. El Salvador 113. 73. Liechtenstein 177. 40 for El Salvador. They missed. 11 for Liechtenstein. They missed. El Salvador need 20. They get 20. Ooh, yeah, this is definitely a comeback. El Salvador 83. Liechtenstein 73. El Salvador 70. Liechtenstein 2. El Salvador 163. Liechtenstein 43. El Salvador 28. 14 for Liechtenstein. El Salvador 157. They missed. they're going to have a lot more chances. Liechtenstein 135. El Salvador 40. Boom! It's 4-4. Why in the world is this going on for so long? Liechtenstein 2. El Salvador 73. Liechtenstein 50. El Salvador 25. Liechtenstein 41. 8 for El Salvador. Liechtenstein 157. El Salvador 103. Liechtenstein 17. El Salvador 14. Liechtenstein 120. El Salvador nothing again. Liechtenstein 114. El Salvador 22. Liechtenstein 40. They got 40. Isn't it weird how 0 has been generated so many times, but 180 hasn't been generated once? There's been like 1,000 numbers generated, guessed, and there's a 1 in 180 chance of it being picked every time. El Salvador, actually 1 in 181 because 0 numbers. 147. Liechtenstein 66. El Salvador 87. Liechtenstein 177, nice. El Salvador 120. Liechtenstein 28. El Salvador 147. The game's not tied again. Liechtenstein 104. 36 for El Salvador. They missed again. 126 for Liechtenstein. They missed. What is 57 plus 57? It's 114, isn't it? El Salvador 18. They got it. The game's tied again. Liechtenstein 7. El Salvador 113. Liechtenstein 52. El Salvador 133. Liechtenstein 116. El Salvador 150. Liechtenstein 11. El Salvador 105. Ooh. El Salvador 14. Liechtenstein 129. El Salvador 22. Liechtenstein 159. El Salvador 68. Liechtenstein 149. El Salvador 74. 64 for Liechtenstein. They missed. El Salvador 166. Liechtenstein 16. They got it. The game's tied again. Liechtenstein 159. El Salvador 129. Liechtenstein 60. El Salvador 119. Liechtenstein 150. El Salvador 59. 132 for Liechtenstein 108. El Salvador 47. 24 for Liechtenstein. They got it. They're winning 5-4. Nice. There still would have been 2 sets to go for Liechtenstein if this was the final. El Salvador 91. Liechtenstein 170. El Salvador 86. Liechtenstein 150. El Salvador 17. Liechtenstein 99. El Salvador 158. Liechtenstein 82. Oh. El Salvador 149. 34 for Liechtenstein. They got 34. They're 2 legs away because they got 34. Liechtenstein 54. El Salvador 177. Liechtenstein 13. El Salvador 155. Liechtenstein 86. El Salvador 63. Liechtenstein 706 for El Salvador. They got it. El Salvador 51. Liechtenstein 21. El Salvador 93. Liechtenstein 137. El Salvador 21. Liechtenstein 37. El Salvador 127. Liechtenstein 57. El Salvador 29. Liechtenstein 102. El Salvador 75. Liechtenstein 147. They're one leg away from the finals. They win this, they're in the finals. Then my prediction will be wrong. Liechtenstein 87. El Salvador 102. Liechtenstein 19. El Salvador 23. Liechtenstein 33. El Salvador 11. Liechtenstein 79. El Salvador 37. Liechtenstein 109. El Salvador 93. Liechtenstein 60. El Salvador 72. 114 to get through to the final. They missed. They're going to have another chance. El Salvador 47. Liechtenstein need 40. They missed again. 116 for El Salvador. They got it. Oh, is it a deciding leg? Is it a deciding leg? Is it a deciding leg? To choose if El Salvador continues in the tournament or Liechtenstein goes through to the final. El Salvador 26. Liechtenstein 40. El Salvador 63. Liechtenstein 100. El Salvador 27. Liechtenstein 63. El Salvador 60. Liechtenstein 105. El Salvador 36. Liechtenstein 162. El Salvador 89. Liechtenstein to go through to the final 31. They missed again. El Salvador 169. Liechtenstein 16. They missed again 31. They missed 8. This would be the worst jackpot ever. But they missed 16. This decides who goes through to the final set. Liechtenstein 12. 85. 94. 56. Liechtenstein 79. El Salvador 96. Liechtenstein 160. El Salvador 131. 156 for Liechtenstein. Every point scored now counts. Every single number, every single one matters. 133. No. 36 for Liechtenstein. They got it. Oh, also, look down here. 0 to 59, 99. 99 times they've scored 0 to 59. El Salvador, 86. If there's a score between 0 and 59, that's 100. 40. Whoa, never seen that number before. El Salvador 12. Liechtenstein 27. El Salvador 177. Liechtenstein 78. El Salvador 70. Liechtenstein 33. El Salvador 156. Liechtenstein 150. El Salvador 36. They got it. The game is tied again. Liechtenstein, 65. El Salvador, 122. Liechtenstein, 163. El Salvador, 165. Liechtenstein, 74. El Salvador, 41. Liechtenstein, 135. 67. Liechtenstein, 64. That's funny. Oh well. Liechtenstein are one leg away for playing against Armenia tomorrow. Tomorrow, like maybe 10 o'clock. What is the text locate? Can you actually? No. Sorry, I'm disturbing you. Oh my god, it actually works. I never knew that was a thing. Alright. Sorry, I got distracted by that. 113. Liechtenstein, 29. El Salvador, 45. Liechtenstein, 111. El Salvador, 15. Liechtenstein, 166. El Salvador, 109. Liechtenstein, 37. El Salvador, 175. 158 to go through to the final. This would be amazing. Boom! Liechtenstein, you are through to the final. You will be playing tomorrow against Armenia. Finally, El Salvador is out. I don't need to say that anymore. Liechtenstein. Alright, let's see all the countries that El Salvador beat before we just leave. Liechtenstein played in the last match. And they could... that's funny. Alright, where's El Salvador? Where is El Salvador? El Salvador beat Italy. And then they beat Trinidad and Tobago. And then they beat Benin. And then they lose against Liechtenstein. So, bye.